and welcome to Real Lives. My name is Eleanor, I live in Chesham and have spent most of my childhood and all of my short adult life in this wonderful part of the world. As a recent school leaver, I've been encouraged by my teachers and others around me to work hard and dream big. Yet I also know that in real life, I have to cope with disappointment and failure. COVID has definitely shown us that we need to be resilient to be able to cope with the unexpected. But where will we find the strength that empowers us to live life to the full while not being overwhelmed by our failures? Well, Real Lives is a chance to hear some great stories from some real people, some who have reached great heights and others deep lows, but they all share one thing in common. They have each experienced a life-changing encounter with Jesus Christ. So this evening we get to hear the story of rower Debbie Flood, a double Olympic medalist and world champion, hearing how her Christian faith has made a difference as she has coped with the pressure to perform, as well as the highs and lows of success and failure. So let me hand over to the author and interviewer, Roger Carswell, and of course to Debbie. Enjoy.
Debbie, it's really good to have you with us. Where are you at the moment?
So at the moment I'm at home in my house in Henley-on-Thames.
All right, famous for rowing, but you are a Yorkshire girl, aren't you, really?
I am. I'm Yorkshire through and through. I'm a northern girl, really.
Absolutely. So rowing, amazing, really, because around here it's not particularly a rowing area, is it? But rowing's your speciality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rowing is not a big thing in Yorkshire. It certainly is more than it used to be. But when I first started, it wasn't really a big thing at all. But I was good on the rowing machine, and that's how I got picked up. That's how I got spotted. And because I'd always done sport all my life, I was naturally good on the rowing machine. So someone said, "Oh, give rowing a go." And for me, I wanted to be good at a sport. I wanted to go to the Olympics. I loved sport, so I thought, "Oh, okay, I'll give it a go."
Now, you come from a bit of a sporting family, don't you? But it was also a Christian family.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family. My grandparents were missionaries in Africa, in Liberia. And so, from birth, that's what I knew, going to church on Sundays. And I guess if you'd have asked me when I was a young child, I would have just said, yeah, I believe in God, I'm a Christian. That was just part of my life. And I thought it was like an automatic thing.
But it was as a teenager you came to a point of personal commitment, personal trust in Jesus.
Yes, I mean, like I say, growing up, if you'd have asked me if I believed in God, I would have said yes. And I thought I was a Christian because my family were and because I went to church. And, I did genuinely believe in God. I didn't believe that I was just a bag of chemicals. For me, there's order, there's beauty, there's design in humans and in the world. So that resonated with me, that I was created, there was a God. And, I knew that I was blessed with the ability and the passion to do sport. Everyone has different passions and different abilities. And for me, that was sport. And I was very happy to take that and get on with life. Sport was my life. That was my everything when I was growing up. But then I joined a youth group when I was 15 and starting to hear about Jesus and the life he lived and why he came to the earth. And I suddenly realized that, yes, God creates us with purpose and ability, but actually, first and foremost, he wants a relationship with us. And that's broken because we don't live life with him or for him. And actually, it's a choice that each one of us has to make. It's not an automatic thing that we are a Christian because we're in a Christian family or that we're good enough, because actually we can't ever be good enough. And we have to make that decision for ourselves. And as a 15-year-old, that's what I did. I realized that, I wasn't living life with God. And I realized that my relationship with him was broken and I needed Jesus, because actually Jesus died for me so that I could have a relationship with God. And that was my starting point. And then we're on a journey with God from that point onwards.
Great. Now, tell us a bit about your sporting journey, because before you got to the Olympics, you really had already done quite well, hadn't you?
Yeah, so, I mean, we all have life plans, don't we? And my life plan was to go to the Olympics and then get on with my life, become a veterinary surgeon. So I started rowing when I was 17, and then I finished school and I decided to commit 2 years of my life to rowing. I was going to go to the Sydney Olympics. And actually, I didn't make it in the end. I wasn't good enough at that point to go. And, that was a real tough time for me as a 20-year-old, with that, sport being a big, big part of my life and really central in my life. And I questioned God. I was like, why am I even, why have I even wasted 2 years of my life? That was so annoying. I felt like I'd wasted 2 years. And actually, I did other things that year instead. I did like under 23 world championships things, and Henley Roll Regatta, which is a big event for us in the rowing world. I didn't want to do them to start with because it wasn't my plan. It wasn't what I thought was good. And in the end, I did them, and I had an amazing summer. And actually, that wasn't the end of my career as I thought it was going to be. It was the beginning. God had other plans. And, so for me, by the time I eventually went to the Olympics in Athens, I'd been rowing for 7 years and I was absolutely loving it. And, God knew better. And that was a really significant point for me in my rowing career, but also in my faith, realizing that actually trusting in God is so key when we don't know what's going on in life. Actually, He does, and He has plans for us. So that was a significant time. So I'd done quite a lot before I actually went to the Olympics 7 years later in Athens.
Now you did well in Athens.
We had an amazing time in Athens. We won a silver medal, and that was for me my first senior medal. I'd won under 23 medals, and I'd won some minor senior things, but not a world championship medal or an Olympic medal. So for me, it was amazing. And
now you say,
Athens, the home of the games.
You say we. Did you row in a team then?
Yeah, so I rowed in a quad. So with 3 of the girls who are still 3 of my best friends now. They're brilliant. I still see them and speak to them. It was amazing. It was amazing time. We were beaten by Germany. At the time, they were like the top nation in rowing. So, they were the favourites. But a silver medal, it was an amazing achievement for us all to have
Have
together.
you got the silver medal with you? Can we see?
I do. It's I keep it in my Athens sock. It is clean. My racing sock.
Let's have a look.
There you go.
Oh, wow. And then the other side?
And it's got some ancient Greek on the other side, and a very worn ribbon being passed through lots and lots of assemblies and hands and
Is it
things
quite,
like that.
quite a heavy medal?
Yeah, so they're solid silver, so they're weighty for their size. So yeah.
So you got the silver at in Athens. That was an amazing moment. And then, of course, the next Olympics were Beijing.
That's right. So 4 years later,
Now, in those 4 years, you carry on rowing. And what does it, when you're training for the Olympics, preparing for the Olympics, what does a day entail? What does it mean?
Yeah, so it's pretty intensive training. Rowing is one of those full-on sports where, for us as full-time athletes, we only get off 3 weeks a year after the World Championships or after the Olympics. So it really is a 4-year cycle and a 4-year commitment to, no weekends, no lie-ins. And, most days we'll train 3 times in a day, sometimes twice, and we'll have half a day off. But a typical day would involve training twice on the water in the morning.
And how long are you on the water?
So a training session would last between an hour and a half and an hour and 40 minutes. So that would be a typical session. Around 20 kilometres would be a session. So twice of that in the morning, and then in the afternoon we do weight training or some core stability or some something on the rowing machine. So 3 sessions, and you get used to being tired.
I'm sure. And have you got to be careful about what you eat? And is this an issue?
So, a good thing about rowing is that you eat lots, but you have to obviously have a good balanced diet. But we would be eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. We'd be drinking 8 litres of water or fluid in a day, because you're sweating it out, and it's important to be hydrated. So it's actually it's a big part of your routine and your what you commit to really as a rower. It's your sleep, it's your recovery, it's your nutrition, it's your training. So it's quite it's very, very all-encompassing.
Amazing. So you go to the Olympics. Did you pray you'd win?
I always prayed that I would be able to do my best. I think imagine if they were all Christians in the final and we all prayed to win. That would be a bit tricky, wouldn't it? But for me, I was so grateful for the opportunities and the abilities that I had, and I wanted to be thankful for them and honour God within them. So for me, it was about just desperately wanting to do as well as I could, and to be able to look back on races and know that I'd done my best. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do. You know, our training is towards trying to win the gold medals, of course. And for that 4 years, our whole attitude and ethos was gold, 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 because we'd won the silver. You know, we wanted the next one to be gold. And, you know, there was lots of expectation. We were one of the favourites going into Beijing.
And I've seen a recording of the race. You really did well for virtually all the race, didn't you?
I know. We were such a strong crew, and we led the race for about 6 minutes out of the 6 minutes and 17 seconds that the race lasted. And just in those final stages, got overtaken by the home nation of China. And you know, you still believing you can win until you cross the line. So it wasn't until we crossed the line that, you know, your heads go down. And actually in that moment, we were absolutely gutted. Nothing could console us, you know. On our interview on telly, we were all crying and the pictures are terrible. We need to get them redone. We just look so miserable because in that moment we were gutted.
So you were elated that you got a silver in Athens and absolutely gutted that you got a silver in Beijing. Did you blame God? Did you blame God?
No, you know what? We actually had an amazing race. We had a really, really good race, and China just were better on the day. You know, they beat us. They rode well. They rode hard, and they just had more than we did on the day. And you know, I guess I've learned over the years, and I think I would have taken it more harder, I think, in the beginning of my career. But you know, you learn that that's what happens in sport. You know, you don't always win, and I'm still gutted we didn't win, you know, even now, but actually, you know, we couldn't have done any more. We had a great race as a crew, and I'm really proud of what we did do. And also for me as a Christian, I think you know, as I matured as an athlete, I also, you know, I matured as a Christian, and I got to know God more, and he helped me to see actually, you know, life is not just about, you know, success in the sense of winning and that kind of thing. Actually, life is more than that. And you know, through the ups and downs, you learn a lot. And actually just, my perspective of life is that I know that I'm not my results. You know, my identity and who I am and my value and worth is not defined by my results. And that's often what you think as an athlete. Are
you known as a Christian in the sort of rowing world, or certainly in the UK? Do people think, oh, Debbie, we know she's religious?
Yeah, I mean, I when I first came onto the rowing scene, I kind of was a really good junior. So I kind of got interviewed by James Cracknell, who was one of the top guys at the time. And he interviewed me, you know, lots of rowing questions, but also what I did in my spare time. And I mentioned that I was Christian. I went to church, and, you know, didn't think he'd mention it, but then he did. So this went out to every single rower in the country. And it was kind of just out there really. And I was a bit nervous about that to start with, but actually it was a real blessing, you know, enable people to come and ask me questions. You know, of course, sometimes that was, you know, questions that weren't maybe being asked in a nice way. Sometimes it was banter. You know, I often got, oh, Debbie's in our boat today, that means God's on our side, you know, lots of banter in the sports world. But you know, in the long run, it enabled me to share life and share faith, and to, you know, for people to be able to see that maybe I did things differently often and ask me why, and had lots of opportunities to bring friends to church and to speak about my faith. So it was wonderful really that people did know that.
Now quickly, let's talk about London, because that was a great moment. And in fact, I think you were one of the people who carried an Olympic torch. Oh, by the way, we haven't seen your silver from Beijing. We ought to see that.
Yes, yeah. So the front design is pretty similar. Oh, sorry, in the camera. And the front design is always going to be the same, except for the kind of venue at the top is different. And then on the back is Chinese jade in this one, so the country can decide whatever they want to have on the back. It's a bit cracked. I managed to drop it and it fell out. And,
all right, now the Olympic torch, you carried that, didn't you? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
So
where did you carry it?
So I actually ended up carrying it in Morecambe, on the other side, Roger, on the other side.
Lancashire.
I know. I was supposed to carry it in Yorkshire, but our training camp dates got changed, so I had to do it 3 days earlier. But it was incredible. It was such an amazing start to kind of get everyone excited about the Olympics. It was wet and it was windy and it was raining, but thousands of people still came and turned out. It was such a funny experience. It was great. It was so great.
And I think you went as slowly as you could, didn't you?
I did, because you don't get to run for it, with it for long. So I basically ran as physically slowly as I could, zigzagging, high-fiving all the kids on the. I mean, I did look silly because the security guards were walking alongside me, but it didn't matter. It lasted longer.
Now, despite injuries, etc., you got into the team. You even got to the final, but tell us what happened.
Yeah, so actually reaching the final for us was a huge achievement, considering the injuries that I'd had in the run up to it. But in the final, when you're racing, you're not only racing to your physical capacity, but also to your technical capacity. And so you're always really on the edge of like physically being able to hold on, but also technically, everything needs to go right. And we actually had a mistake in our crew in that first kind of 500 meters. It's called a crab, and it's where the blade goes in not straight, not square, and it gets sucked into the water, and it's kind of like a massive handbrake and kind of brings you to a standstill. And that happened really early on in our race, and it's really hard to get it back after that. And we were really disappointed with our race, because as an athlete you want to be able to say you raced as hard as you could, and then you can kind of process the results and know that the people who beat you were faster. Whereas I guess we'll never know whether we were capable of kind of scraping through to one of the medals or anything like that, because we didn't have that perfect race, if you like. So that was a different way to finish my career, really.
Now, Debbie, time's gone, but you're married, you've got a family, and you must look back. 3 Olympics was amazing, but if I could say, Debbie, just renounce your faith. Now, I can't do this, obviously. Renounce your faith, and I'll make sure you get 3 golds. Would you do it?
No way. I mean, however lovely that would be to have gold medals, I'm not going to take them when I pass away. And, actually, Jesus is more important than anything we can gain in this earth. Not just for when we, for eternity, but actually for now, for every day, for living life with God now, every day. That is it's where we're made to be, and it is the most important decision I ever made. And so I wouldn't swap that for anything.
So as a teenager, you asked the Lord Jesus Christ to forgive you and take control of your life. A few years have passed, at least 6, we'll say, and you look back and you still believe that the Jesus who became real to you then is just as precious and as real to you now.
Absolutely. And I've experienced that in my life for real, for me, and I see that in other people's lives as well. I see him at work, and, he is an active and living God now. He's not just something that was 2,000 and odd years ago. It's actually, Jesus is alive now. God is real, and he is at work in people's lives.
Debbie, it's great to have time to chat with you and see you in your lovely home as well. And but thanks for joining us. And God bless you, Debbie.
Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, bye. What a great character Debbie is. I do love her. She was brought up not many miles away from me. There's something about we Yorkshire people, but we'll leave that for the moment. There's a book in the Bible after the book of Psalms and Proverbs called the Book of Ecclesiastes. Now, it's an unusual book because everything in it is not actually God's thoughts to us. It's strange. But Solomon was the king. He was the wisest of all kings. He was the son, of course, of King David, who was the greatest king of Israel. But he was a king who drifted a long, long way away from God, sadly, despite all the gifts that God had given to him. And he wrote a book called Ecclesiastes. And in one way, it's wise in that it's philosophical musings. But some of those musings are not very helpful. 28 times he talks about things being under the sun. So he's seeing everything from Earth's point of view, 7 times under the earth. And 37 times he says about life, it's just vanity. Now, eventually, to be honest, at the end of the book, it changes completely because he says this is where fulfillment comes. And it's in remembering your Creator in the days of your youth. And he says we were made to know, to enjoy, to fear God. And so he sort of has a twist at the end of the tale. But some of the things that he says are quite depressing because he's looking at things just from a worldview that is excluding God. Now, there's a passage in chapter 9 where he talks about 5 areas where it just seems as though there's injustice, and about racing, about warfare, about livelihood, about riches, and about favour. But he has this phrase that it just ties in, I think, with what we've heard from Debbie. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, etc. Sometimes the race is not to the swift. Sport gives a very good illustration of the sort of uncertainties and unfairness of life. Sometimes the unfairness can be experienced simply because of human wrongness. With a son in New Zealand who loves sport, I've heard this tale told many times. It's all to do with the Australia versus the New Zealand World Series Cup in Melbourne in 1981, and it was the final. And New Zealand needed a 6 to win in the cricket, and there was just one final ball. In fact, no, I think it was a 6 for a draw, wasn't it? But the bowler, the Australian, bowled underarm and rolled the ball along the red ground, so there was no way a 6 could be scored. Richie Benaud, of course, the great commentator, said it was one of the most disgraceful moments in the history of cricket, and the very next day international rules for cricket were changed. But that was just wrongness, and it was unfair. Sometimes, though, it's because of human weakness things seem to be unfair. Derek Redmond, some of you will remember this incident in the Barcelona Olympics in 1992. It was a semi-final of the 400 metres, and running, he pulled his hamstring, and he hobbled to a halt, then collapsed in pain, and the stretcher bearers ran out onto the track. But Redmond hobbled on. And then his father, do you remember, he jumped onto the track past the security, and they completed the race together. But human weakness led to what appeared to be great unfairness. Now, none of that worked for Debbie, did it, in the London Olympics? So is life just random? And Solomon says, no, it's not. Listen to this. He says, this wisdom I have seen also under the sun, and it seemed great to me. There was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it, besieged it, and built great snares around it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that same poor man. Then I said, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. I'm not sure what Solomon had in mind, but it makes me think of the Lord Jesus Christ. Do you remember he said, whoever drinks of this water shall thirst again? And he was summarising the book of Ecclesiastes, really. Solomon, though, saw a city with a few people in it, and I think of our tiny planet. And then he saw the city besieged by a powerful enemy. Well, hasn't something happened to our world? Call it the devil, call it sin, call it evil. Something has gone wrong. But then Solomon saw this poor wise man. It makes me think of the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't know whether Solomon was thinking prophetically like that, but we look to the Lord Jesus, born and laid in a manger. You know, he had nowhere to lay his head. He had no coins to illustrate a point when he wanted to. He was poor. But Solomon said that the man saved the city by wisdom. And Jesus, through his great wisdom, came to save the world. And of course, he did it by dying on the cross. It was there that he carried on himself the sin of the world. He did it by dying. He gave himself over to death and was buried and lay in that tomb for those 3 days. He did it by rising from the dead and conquering death. And he does it today by inviting men and women to come to him. Now, Solomon said that wise man was forgotten. And I suppose in many ways in the UK, we've seen it over this pandemic when all thought of God has been airbrushed out as far as the media, the politicians are concerned. He may be forgotten by some, but he's known and loved by others. And do you know our great desire in this special week of activities at Chesham is that you should turn to this often despised, forgotten man who lived, who died for us because he loved us, who rose from the dead, and he today says, come to me, all you who labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He'll give rest to your soul. He'll forgive you. He'll become your friend, your forever friend, because he'll take you through life and one day to be with himself forever. The race is not necessarily to the swift. And heaven is not for those who have earned it, but for those who have received the gift which Jesus purchased and he offers to us, and he offers it to you tonight. won't you ask him to become your Lord, your Saviour, your forever friend? He will answer that prayer.
Well, great to hear Debbie's story and to discover why meeting and knowing Jesus has been more important to her than all the medals she has accumulated over the years. And like Debbie, as Christians here in Chesham, it's our conviction that knowing Jesus and being part of his great story is the most important and exciting adventure we can embark on when it comes to life and enjoying it to the full. And so, if you have heard anything that has intrigued you, or you'd like to find out more about this amazing individual, Jesus Christ, then let me encourage you to get in touch via the Real Lives website. It would be fantastic if you were able to join the next online Christianity Explored course, starting in just a couple of weeks. It's a great way to explore the big questions of life in a relaxed and informal way, and to discover more about Jesus and find out how his story connects to ours. And do feel free to get in touch with any of the churches hosting this Real Lives Week. Just use the links on the Real Lives website to find out more. Most churches are now meeting in person and online, but do feel free to connect. It'd be fantastic if you were able to join us and to hear something of your story too. And of course, do join the next Real Lives live stream on Wednesday at 7:55 p.m. Same time, same place. Thanks for joining us and hope to see you then. Bye.